Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Sailing. Admiral the Black Dragon, Concubine from Momousagi. Chapter 21. In an instant, the audience was in an uproar. Colonel Crow, you are so brave. It's normal, if my son-in-law is as excellent as Eric, no matter how many of my daughters will marry him. Mada, it's a pity that I don't have a daughter, or I must let her marry Eric. After all, such an outstanding young man as Eric is really rare in 100 years. It's over, Hina's famous flower has a owner, woo woo woo. Cry for a chicken. That's right, what are you crying for? Even Goddess Hina can't possibly take a liking to you just like you are. Why am I crying? I'm commemorating my youth. I've liked Hina for a long time. Yo, you're still an infatuated species. At this time, Hina snorted coldly and said, Eric, it's been so long, I want to ask if I can start. Eric was in a good mood and said with a smile, Hina, you are demon fruit power, and so am I. My fruit represents the power of darkness, so I have already thought of a code name, Black Dragon Admiral. Today, I want to let everyone know that dark fruit is the strongest, and this devil fruit is officially on the stage of the times. Hearing this, Hina sneered, don't be such an idiot, Captain Ku, you've already figured out Admiral's code name, it's ridiculous. Eric smiled, are you laughing to death? You'll know right away. Dark water. As soon as the words fell, the left hand instantly turned into a hand of darkness, and he pushed forward suddenly, with the palm facing Hina in front of him. Immediately, the invisible dark traction, like a sea wave, swept forward. Boom! Suddenly, Hina was shocked. What happened? Hina exclaimed, eyes widening. However, before she could react, the body was subjected to a strong attraction, pulling her directly to Eric. When she came back to her senses, she was horrified to find that she had been firmly grasped by Eric. How can it be? Hina was stunned, but still didn't react. Not only her, but the whole audience was stunned. God, what happened just now? Eric, what is that devil fruit? It's a weird feeling. Dark fruit, what is this devil fruit? It looks so scary. Eric said this is the strongest devil fruit, how is this possible? The power of darkness feels so mysterious, just as mysterious as Eric. No, what happened just now? Why did Hina suddenly fly in front of Eric? Didn't you see? Hina was also shocked, this must be Eric's masterpiece, it's terrible. Krov stood up in shock, and said in shock, Eric is actually a fruit-capable user, this. Not only has he mastered armament hockey, but he is also capable. This innate condition is too strong. Okay. Very good, if he can become my son-in-law, it is undoubtedly the best, ha ha ha. At this time, Eric smiled and took the initiative to explain, Hina, you are my favorite woman, so I can answer your doubts. Why do I say that dark fruit is the strongest? Because this devil fruit is the nemesis of all abilities. Any capable person who appears in front of me will be precisely locked by me, and then drawn by my dark power. Don't say it's you, even Pelusalino Vice Admiral, after he turns into light, still can't escape my traction. The strongest force in this universe is the black hole, which can swallow everything, let alone light, even time and space. Hina didn't believe it at all, and said coldly, even if I was pulled over by you, what's the use, what can it explain? Okay Eric, let me stay in the cage. Dark prison. As soon as the voice fell, he urged the cage fruit to lock Eric up. What? Suddenly, Hina exclaimed, her face full of horror. Eric smiled slightly, and said lightly, Hina, it seems that you have already found out. Hina widened her beautiful eyes and asked in shock, what's going on, where is my cage fruit? Eric laughed and said, if it's just someone with the pulling ability, then I wouldn't call dark fruit the strongest. After pulling the capable person over, as long as he is caught by me, the capable person will not be able to use the fruit ability. Even those with Logia abilities will be imprisoned by me, and they will not be able to elementalize at all. Hina was stunned and said in disbelief, impossible, how can there be such a powerful devil fruit in this world? Eric smiled, and said calmly, if this devil fruit is not strong enough, how dare I say that I want to become an admiral, wouldn't that be a slap in the face? After speaking, he pushed towards Hina's left chest. Tang tang tang. Hina suffered from inertia and kept going backwards. Eric raised his hand, scratched in the void, and said with a smile, it feels good, she is indeed my favorite woman. You idiot, Hina stopped, pointed at Eric, and said something angrily. Off the field. At this moment, everyone was stunned. There was a look of shock on everyone's face. Wow, is what Eric said true? Although I don't believe it, Hina's expression says it all. The nemesis of all ability users, I wipe it. Too strong, Eric is really too strong. No wonder Eric wants to become Admiral. It turns out that he really has the confidence, what a fool. Dark fruit, what a scary devil fruit. Even light can be pulled, it's too scary, this is definitely the strongest devil fruit. Field. Eric put his arms around his body and said with a smile, Hina, no matter how you look at it, you are not my opponent. In terms of fruit, your cage fruit is really good, but it can't be compared with dark fruit at all, the difference is not a little bit. In terms of physical skills, you have not mastered hockey, but I am the owner of two-color hockey. Eric shook his head and said calmly, Hina, admit defeat, you are really not my opponent. Impossible, I am Hina, the most confident Hina. Without even thinking about it, Hina refused directly. Immediately afterwards, she frowned and asked doubtfully, what did you just say, two-color hockey? Not only her, but everyone else present was very confused, this was the first time they heard such a statement. Two-color hockey, what is this stuff? I don't know, but it feels very unusual. Eric is really too strong, this is obviously some kind of very strong power. We haven't heard of it, but Eric has mastered it, which is too scary. Heavenly genius. At this time, Eric thought for a while, and said helplessly, well, if it's someone else, I'm too lazy to explain, but you are different. After a pause, Eric said solemnly, listen well, Hina, the two-color hockey refers to armament hockey and observation hockey. Armament hockey, I have used it before, can strengthen attack and defense, and in the face of Logia's flowing body, this power can also attack their entities. Observation hockey, you can strongly sense the opponent's existence, even if you don't have to see it with your eyes, you can avoid any attack from the enemy. Hina frowned, shook her head and said, you can dodge the attack without using your eyes, Hina doesn't believe it. Hina has to try it out for herself. After finishing speaking, he rushed towards Eric. Eric turned around slowly, turned his back and said with a smile, you are a stubborn woman, it seems that I still have to completely defeat your arrogance, or I really can't make you submit obediently. Fall down. Hina came behind Eric, clenched her fist and punched out quickly. Eric calmed down and moved a step to the left. Immediately, Hina's fist fell to the ground and hit nothing. How can it be? Hina was taken aback, and said in disbelief, I don't believe I can't beat you. Then, he jumped up and kicked Eric in the head. Eric lowered his head slightly and dodged the attack again. Left uppercuts, right uppercuts, sweeping legs, even using the ability of cage fruit. However, Eric didn't even look at it, and moved left and right, easily avoiding all the attacks. This scene shocked the audience. Everyone couldn't sit still and stood up in shock. Terrible. God, what kind of power is this? You can avoid all the attacks without looking with your eyes, how is this possible? Too strong. Eric is really too strong. Is this observation hockey? It's scary, it's scary. Wow, I didn't expect there to be such a terrifying power in this world, it's amazing. Can someone tell me why I've never heard of observation hockey? At this time, Crove was stunned, and said in shock, Eric not only has armament hockey, but even mastered knowledge, this. No, such a proud son of heaven must become my son-in-law. Even if Hina disagrees, I must convince her that it's hard to find a son-in-law with such a speedy dragon. Field. Hina stopped attacking, exhausted, and said in disbelief, really, you can avoid all of Hina's attacks without looking. Observation hockey is real, Hina believed it. Eric turned around, still clasped his hands in front of him, and said with a faint smile, Hina, the power of hockey, basically no one in the world can master it. Follow me. I will let you master the two-color hockey in the future, and let you become the female vice admiral of this department, trust me. Hearing this, Hina fell silent, sighed and said, Hina is very disappointed. I didn't expect the gap between us to be so huge. Hina is a person who is willing to gamble and admit defeat. Since she loses, she will abide by the stipulations of the bet. From today onwards, Hina is your woman, although Hina is very reluctant, but Hina will not regret it. Very well, Hina, you really kept your promise and did not disappoint me. Eric nodded and cast an admiring look. At this time, the staff finally reacted and announced excitedly. This is the end of the game, first place, Captain Eric. As soon as the words fell, the audience burst into warm applause. Captain Eric, you deserve it. What is this called? If you are proud on the battlefield, you are also proud of yourself in love. Eric is simply a big winner in life. My goddess, she was taken down after all, woo woo woo. Hina, I won't like you anymore, I hate married women, what a fool. Stop being an idiot, would you like to have a chicken feather, are you worthy of Hina? That's right, Eric and Hina, they are a natural couple, they are both talented and beautiful. Maid, Captain Eric is so strong, I'm afraid Hina, a delicate flower, will be destroyed in the future. Envy, I'm so envious. At this time, Andre looked at Guy Larch and others, laughed and said, the game is over, remember to complete the bet, I am waiting for your arrival in branch 166, ha ha ha. Guy Larch cursed angrily, then walked away from here. The other colonels gritted their teeth one by one, resenting Guy Larch again. This fool cheated me, Lousy will kill him sooner or later. Guy Larch, this idiot, I'm fooled. Unite, let's kill that dog together. Okay, Lousy must vent his anger. Soon, one by one began to exit. On the square, there are 123 branches and 166 branches left. Clover looked at Eric with admiration in his eyes, and said in admiration, Eric, you are really amazing, you are the most excellent young man I have ever seen. Don't worry, I will do what I say, and this marriage is settled. Immediately afterwards, he frowned and said, however, Hina will go to the headquarters in the next 2 days, and the marriage is not easy. Eric smiled slightly. Colonel Crow, you don't know something, I'm planning to go to the headquarters these days. Oh, Clover said in surprise, is there such a thing? At this time, Andre came over and said with a smile, Eric is right, after the game, he can go to the headquarters. He paused, looked at Crow, and said enviously, Colonel Crow, why Eric was promoted to captain, on the one hand, it is because he is strong enough to be qualified for this position. But the most important thing is that the headquarters has listed him as a key training target, so I will give the green light all the way to keep promoting Eric. Now, he is no longer a captain, but a lieutenant colonel of the 166th branch. Shock. Immediately, everyone present was shocked. Middle, lieutenant colonel. Oh my god, a 17-year-old lieutenant colonel. I wipe. Lieutenant Colonel Eric, this. It turned out to be the key training object of the headquarters, it's too awesome. As expected of Mr. Eric, awesome class. Zuzuzu, focus on training at the headquarters, now Eric is really taking off. Envy, it's so excellent, Eric is indeed my idol. Croft looked at Eric and said in amazement, I really didn't expect that you would be the focus of training at the headquarters. Now the height you can reach is extraordinary. Okay, very good, as expected of my son-in-law, he is indeed the best, ha ha ha. At this moment, Hina looked at Eric, and murmured, no wonder Hina lost, so you are a talent handpicked by the headquarters, Hina convinced, Hina admits that you are not as good as you. Eric looked at her and encouraged him, Hina, your potential is very powerful. It is inevitable to become a vice admiral in the future. You don't need to underestimate yourself. Hearing this, Hina was refreshed and said confidently, that's for sure. I am Hina, except for being inferior to you, Hina doesn't care about others. Eric nodded and smiled slightly, well, 3 days later, we will go to the headquarters to report together, and we happen to have a companion. Good, Hina agreed, frowned and said, but you have to teach me how to practice, Hina wants to learn two-color hockey. Eric smiled lightly, I'll teach you if you don't tell me, after all, you are my woman, you can't do it if you are too weak. Turning to look at Andre, he calmly said, Colonel Andre, I'm done with my work here, we can go. Andre was all smiles, and said with a relaxed mood, let's go, I can't wait a long time ago, with the first record, Guy will come back, ha ha ha. Then, all the members of branch 166 left here. Clover looked at Eric's back and said with emotion, my son-in-law is really so perfect. Not only is he handsome, but he is also strong. He has a restrained and steady personality, and he is neither impatient nor impatient. He is a material for a high official. Maybe in a few decades, he will really reach Admiral's position. It's really exciting. Hina also looked at Eric's figure, and said in agreement, Hina is a very confident person, and has never admired others, except for Eric. You are younger than me, but you are so much stronger than me. Hina was really hit. His cultivation talent is really terrifying. No one can compare to him. 166 branches. At this moment, Eric and the others walked into the office building. The soldiers had already received the news that Eric had won the first place, and they applauded enthusiastically and paid attention to each other. Master Eric is too powerful. Number 1, what the hell? Our branch has always been at the bottom, this time it's really heaven-defying, shit. Zuzuzu, you haven't seen it, Mr. Eric is overpowering the crowd, that's really killing the quartet. Maid, it's a pity that I don't have a chance to see it, it's stupid. Tell me quickly, how Master Eric got promoted, Lousy is so curious. Wrong billions, a big regret in life, what a pity. Soon, a group of people came to Andre's office. Andre looked at Dea and said with a smile on his face, Eric has been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, take him to get his uniform. Yes, Colonel. Dea looked at Eric respectfully, and said humbly, Lieutenant Colonel Eric, please follow me. Then, the two went to the warehouse. The soldiers on the side were all stunned. I heard it right, Lieutenant Colonel, all wipe. Eric has been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, my god. This. It's not surprising, the first place in the competition, you haven't seen Sir Eric's performance, it's so cool. Yes, all the contestants raised their hands and surrendered as soon as they met Mr. Eric. Lousy was so excited, ha ha ha. Maid, come, describe to me quickly, what Master Eric has done. Yeah, why did you raise your hand and surrender as soon as you touched it? What's going on? On the way, Dea was very excited, and said respectfully, Master Eric, I really didn't expect that you became a lieutenant colonel. It's amazing, he's amazing, I've never seen someone as powerful as you. Eric smiled and said, Dea, I will go to the headquarters in a few days, and I will transfer you to my side when I find an opportunity in the future. Dea nodded, and said piously, Master Eric, don't worry, I will definitely follow you to the death. Soon, the two came to the warehouse. Eric put on a new military uniform. On the epaulettes, there are 2 stars with a bar, which is very eye-catching. Lieutenant Colonel Eric, you look even more majestic in this outfit, enough to fascinate thousands of girls. Dea quickly praised it. Eric smiled lightly. As expected of the Lieutenant Colonel's clothes, it really feels good to wear. A new day. At this time, Eric became the Lieutenant Colonel in the first place in the branch competition. These 2 news have spread to all the nearby small towns. Countless people went crazy, discussing Eric after dinner. Among them, the most heated discussion was Eric's hometown, the small town of Konig. My god, Eric has become a lieutenant colonel. What did you say? Isn't it a captain? Why did you become a lieutenant colonel again? In the branch competition, Mr. Eric won the first place and was directly promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel. Many people know about it. That's impossible, Lieutenant Colonel, what an official this must be, idiot. It's smoking, really, the ancestral grave of Eric's family must be smoking. It's amazing, Eric is only 17 years old, a 17-year-old lieutenant colonel, this is scary. Why didn't Master Eric come back? I really want to see him, I want to pursue him. Don't be stupid, Mr. Eric must be very busy. If you have time to come back, and you are so ugly, Eric will definitely look down on you. Master Eric. Morning, afternoon, evening. The people in the small town of Konig have been discussing Eric all day long. And this discussion continued until the next day. At this time, in the small town of Konig, inside a luxurious residence. This is the residence of Jersis, the richest man in town. In the room, many people were drinking tea and chatting. Jersis lit a cigarette and sighed, I never thought that Eric would be able to go this far. It's incredible. Others were also very emotional and expressed their thoughts one after another. Yeah, Eric is only 17 years old, so young and promising. It can be said that someone as excellent as Eric is really a genius. It's a miracle, Eric is the miracle of our town, and it can only be described as a miracle. If I had known that he was so powerful, I would have invested in him no matter what. Jersis, your daughter is so beautiful, it is most suitable to marry Eric, don't you think about it? Yes, I want to say that too. Jersis shook his head and said with a wry smile, I have such an idea, but the key point is that I have nothing but money. Eric is a lieutenant colonel. With his power and status, how can he see me as a businessman? There is no hope. The person he is looking for must be one in a million. As far as my daughter is concerned, he will definitely not like it. Time passed quickly, and it was 2 days later. North Blue 123 branch. At this time, in front of the office building, Croft looked at Eric's epaulets and said with a smile, Eric, you look even more handsome in this outfit, and you are simply heroic. With a cigarette in his mouth, Hina said lightly, this guy is really handsome. This is the first time Hina has seen such a handsome man. Eric smiled and said calmly, it's almost time, let's go. Go, have a good trip. Croft waved his hand and smiled. Then, Eric and Hina walked outside. 3:30 in the afternoon. Warship, on deck. Eric smiled and said, Hina, your father attaches great importance to it, and even sent a warship to escort it. With a cigarette in his mouth, Hina said calmly, it's a long way from North Blue to Marineford, and the speed of the warship is faster. Eric nodded slightly, his eyes flashed, go into the room, and I will tell you how to practice hockey. Why do you have to go into the room and say no here? Hina frowned, her face puzzled. Eric waved his hand and said calmly, the method of cultivating hockey is a top secret and cannot be known to outsiders. After finishing speaking, he walked to a certain room. Hina felt very puzzled, but after thinking about it, she felt that what Eric said made sense, so she stepped up to follow. Inside the room, as soon as Eric came in, he stepped aside and let Hina in. Hina didn't hesitate either. After entering the door, she turned around and closed the door. At this time, Eric had evil eyes in his eyes, and he stepped forward to hug Hina. Ah, Hina exclaimed, startled. Eric's hands were very nimble, and he came directly to the two peaks and began to play the piano. Let go of me, what are you doing? Hina raised her eyebrows and accused angrily. Eric sniffed, and suddenly a burst of fragrance hit him, muttering to himself, Hina, do you know, I liked you a long time ago. At that time, I bought a lot of posters and put them on the wall. I looked at you every day, and then fantasized about being with you. Now, all this has finally come true, I am not dreaming, and this is not a poster. Eric, what nonsense are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Hina said angrily, let go of me, or Hina will be rude to you. Eric continued to talk to himself. Hina, although Marine has many beauties, you can definitely rank second. Khalifa, Ian, Tashigi, they are all inferior to you. Hina, you are already my woman, so don't resist, just follow me with peace of mind. Don't worry, I will treat you well in my life. After speaking, he hugged Hina horizontally and strode forward. Eric, you fool, let me go. Hina blushed with anger, and immediately used the ability of Cage Fruit to lock Eric up. However, she was doomed to be disappointed. Eric looked down at her, smiled and said, Hina, the fruit ability has already explained everything, you are destined to surrender to me. Asshole. Gritting her teeth angrily, Hina scolded, Eric, you are a soldier, do you think it's appropriate to do this? Eric put her down, and said in a deep voice, Hina, let me ask you something, do you agree with that bet? Hearing this, Hina fell silent. Finally, without saying anything, she slowly closed her eyes. Seeing this, Eric immediately understood, showing a strange smile. Eric, it's still daytime. Hina, ever since I came to this world, I have secretly sworn that the poster must be turned into reality. I don't understand what you're saying, let me go. Today is my happiest day as a human being in 2 lifetimes. All my dreams will come true today. What the hell are you talking about, it hurts. Eric looked up at the ceiling and let out a smug laugh. Sure enough, time travel is the best. If it were placed on the earth, I could only face the poster. Now everything is within reach, ha ha ha. Pain. Eric smiled and said, Hina, the piano can not only be played head-on, but also turned upside down. Now try to turn it upside down and play the piano. I believe you can play the most beautiful music. You fool. Eric laughed again and again, in an extremely good mood. Sure enough, the piano should be played upside down, and the melody played in this way is the most beautiful. There is no better melody than this. I don't know how long it has been. The room finally fell silent. Eric picked up the cigarette on the table, lit one, and said speechlessly, "It really is a lady's cigarette, and it's not easy to smoke at all." Hina snorted coldly, "If it's not easy to smoke, then don't take my cigarette." After talking, I went to get a cigarette. Eric grabbed her hand and said with a serious face, "Hina, you are a woman, so you should look like a woman. I don't like women who smoke. From today on, you should quit smoking." Hina sat up, oops, and immediately lay down. She frowned and said unconvinced, "You can smoke, why can't I?" Hina has been smoking cigarettes for so many years, why can't she stop smoking? What's the reason? Eric took a puff of his cigarette and said with a blank expression, "Hina, women who smoke are all those who are out of society and miscellaneous. As a Marine, how can you be like them? I'll say it again, I don't like you smoking, you should change for me, quit." Hina fell silent, her eyes kept flickering, and she asked after a while, "We are already like that, Hina is your woman, and you are Hina's man. If you really don't like me smoking, Hina can change, but you have to give Hina some time, after all Hina has smoked cigarettes for many years." Eric nodded, and said relievedly, "Quit slowly, I didn't ask you to quit immediately." "Okay, you have a good rest, I will go out to practice first, and I will teach you how to learn two-color hockey tomorrow." After finishing speaking, with a smile all over his face, he strode towards the door, feeling extremely happy. Hina watched his back silently, with a confused look on her face. I really became his woman. For a while, Hina still couldn't adapt. What a confident woman she is, but now she has come to this step, which makes her really unbelievable and unacceptable. I can only say that Eric is really excellent, and Hina is indeed inferior to him. In the end, Hina sighed and accepted her fate from the bottom of her heart. 8 p.m. Warship, on deck. At this time, black smoke billowed from Eric's body, and he retracted into his body again. Suddenly, footsteps came. "Eric, what are you doing?" Hina walked over cautiously with small steps. Seeing this, Eric said quickly, "I said what's the matter with you woman, won't you take a break, you are not suitable for walking now." Hina snorted and said angrily, "I'm Hina, a little pain." Hina won't take it seriously. As expected of a female soldier, her endurance is really extraordinary. Eric nodded, and said gratifiedly, "Hina, you are speaking more and more feminine now, I like you like this very much. You have to know that I'm your man, so be sure to speak softly to me. If you speak to others, you can still be the same as before. Do you understand what I mean? I am different from other people, you have to learn to treat them differently." Hina rolled his eyes at him and snorted, "Is that so?" "Ha ha ha, yes, that's it." Eric spread his hands and looked up to the sky and laughed. Hina asked curiously, "Hina asked you just now, what are you doing?" Eric released the power of darkness again, wrapped himself up, and said in a deep voice, "Hina, dark fruit represents black holes, and black holes are endless and full of mystery. No one can study them thoroughly. Although I continue to develop this devil fruit, the efficiency is actually not very high. Just now I was researching how to make the dark armor." Hina frowned, and asked, "Armor of darkness?" Eric explained, "The so-called dark armor is named by myself. I use the dark power of dark fruit to create the strongest armor for myself, which can ignore all attacks." "How is it possible to have such a strong defense?" Hina looked surprised, obviously not convinced. "Eric, believe it or not, this is a black hole, the strongest force that can destroy the universe, so dark fruit is unparalleled and represents infinite possibilities. To tell you the truth, because of the black hole properties of dark fruit, I can eat a lot of devil fruit, and my body will not repel it, nor will it explode." "What?" Hina was taken aback, and quickly turned her head to look around, and whispered, "Eric, there are soldiers beside you, aren't you afraid of being heard by them?" Eric raised his brows and said appreciatively, "Yes, you are doing very well, you will consider me from my point of view, it seems that you really regard me as your man, and you will care about me from the bottom of your heart. Good." Hina gave him a blank look, and said speechlessly, "I gave you my first time, of course I have to consider it for you, it goes without saying." Eric nodded and said with a smile, Don't worry, it's not a secret that you can eat more than one devil fruit, and everyone in the headquarters will know about it in the future. Only by letting them know, will they feel that I have full potential, and then let me continue to climb up, and finally become the Black Dragon Admiral. Hearing this, Hina's beautiful eyes sparkled. Eric, you are really confident, even countless times more confident than Hina. Eric shrugged his shoulders and said casually, there is actually a reason why I am so confident. Come here and let me tell you. Hina hastily followed suit. Eric whispered, for hockey, in addition to knowledge and armed colors, there is also the strongest hockey, and that is Conqueror's hockey. Conqueror's hockey, what is this? Hina asked in a low voice. Eric, Conqueror's hockey is owned by only one person in a million. It depends entirely on the user's own courage and courage. It is destined by nature and cannot be acquired by cultivation. And your man, I have the strongest power, so I am so confident, because I am the owner of Conqueror's hockey. Of course, this is a secret, you just need to know it, don't tell it outside, not even your father. Hearing this, Hina was shocked, but also puzzled, why can't my father know? Eric said very seriously, everyone who owns Conqueror's hockey is full of ambitions and will not easily surrender to others. If the Marine executives know that I have this kind of power, they will probably prevent me from being promoted, and then I will not be able to become Admiral. You are my woman, and according to various circumstances, you are worthy of my trust, so I will tell you this secret. Can you understand my good intentions? Immediately, Hina was very moved, nodded solemnly, and said seriously, Eric, don't worry, Hina won't say anything, you are the most important person to Hina, and Hina will swear to keep a secret for you. Seeing his goal achieved, Eric was in a good mood. The reason why he said this was to make Hina completely return to her heart and be completely controlled by him. At this time, Hina blinked her beautiful eyes, and asked curiously, Eric, since you can eat many devil fruits, besides dark fruit, do you have other devil fruits on your body? Eric shook his head, said with a wry smile, no, the better devil fruit is really hard to find. Before in branch 166, I received 3 tasks and captured 3 capable users in total, rhino fruit, cricket fruit, and glass fruit. In the end, I didn't deprive them of devil fruit. I really don't like it. What? Hina said in shock. Eric, what did you just say, depriving devil fruit? Eric nodded and said with a smile, I forgot to say just now, dark fruit represents a black hole, which can attract anything, including the power of devil fruit. So I can strip the devil fruit from the capable person, inject it into the fruit, and turn it into a devil fruit. Oh my god. Hina's beautiful eyes widened, she was extremely surprised and said, this is too scary. Eric shrugged his shoulders, with a calm expression on his face, why did I say that dark fruit is the strongest devil fruit? The reason is that this devil fruit has many magical abilities. Hina exclaimed. So, dark fruit is indeed the strongest devil fruit, really too strong. 11 p.m. On a warship, in a certain room. At this time, Hina was about to turn off the lights and go to sleep. Suddenly, with a creak, the wooden door was pushed open, and Eric stepped in. What are you doing here? Hina froze for a moment and asked in doubt. Eric closed the door and said with a smile, it goes without saying, you are my fiancé, we naturally sleep together. Don't want. Hina waved her hand and said with some fear, I really can't, don't even try to touch me again. Eric said a little speechlessly, don't worry, I'm just sleeping, I'm not a stallion, how could I keep doing that? Hina breathed a sigh of relief, but still warned, Eric, I hope you will do what you say, I really can't do it. Calm down. Eric turned off the light and lay down. At this time, Hina asked, Eric, how long do you think I can learn hockey? Wait a minute, I suddenly found a problem. Eric smiled and said, in the future, when there is no one around, don't call me by my name, call me husband. Husband. Hina frowned and asked, what does husband mean? It doesn't sound good at all. Eric. Husband means husband. You call me husband and I call you wife. It's such a happy decision. Hina snorted and said angrily, okay, whatever you want, answer Hina's question quickly. Eric hugged Hina and said with a smile, honey, you have good aptitude. You should be able to learn single-color hockey in 1 month, and two-color hockey in 2 months. Hina asked curiously, what about Conqueror's hockey? Eric laughed, my wife, you don't have such aptitude, it's enough for you to master two-color hockey. 4 days later, on the warship, Eric and Hina are practicing on the deck. Suddenly, a soldier ran over and reported, Lieutenant Colonel Eric, Hina Lieutenant Junior grade, there seems to be a pirate group fighting on the island ahead. Hearing this, the two quickly stopped their cultivation and looked forward together. I saw an island in the distance. The island was lush and full of green vegetation. It was obviously a deserted island. Hina frowned, and suggested, Eric, we have entered the Grand Line, and the pirates here are relatively strong, so let's leave it alone and move on. Eric was silent for a while, his eyes flickered, and he said after a while, if it's a pirate fight, it's probably for a certain treasure. Well, after the warship docks, you all stay here, and I will go and have a look alone. Hina snorted, dissatisfied, no, you have already passed, and I must follow to see. Eric smiled, okay, you go there too. Soon, the warship came to the shore. At this time, the shouts of killing became more and more clear. Let's go. After Eric finished speaking, he jumped and landed on the shore. Hina followed closely behind and followed. Desert Island Center. A fierce battle is taking place here. Cabbage held a big knife, pointed at a middle-aged man in front, and roared, Slassie, teach me the devil fruit in your hand, or I will kill you today. Slassie looked at the devil fruit in his hand, and snorted coldly, you don't even know what devil fruit it is, but you dare to attack my Bloodaxe pirates, you are impatient. Cabbage said loudly, although Lousy doesn't know what devil fruit it is, it must be very unusual. Hurry up and hand it over to Lousy, and Lousy can spare you. Stop talking nonsense, treat me like I'm afraid of you. Slassie directly yelled back. At this time, a little boy screamed, it's not good, boss, there are 2 Marines over there. What? Immediately, the 2 pirate groups were startled, and they all looked aside. I saw 2 Marines, a man and a woman, walking towards this side. Seeing this, Cabbage laughed loudly, and said ferociously, 2 little brats dare to come here to meddle in their own business. Are you looking for death? Slassie looked at Hina with an evil smile, this female Marine is very beautiful, Lousy wants to have fun later, I have never played with such a beautiful Marine, hee hee hee. The younger ones also roared with laughter, each one was very excited, with a bloodthirsty gleam in their eyes. Hina's pretty face was frosty, and she said coldly, these pirates, Hina wants you to look good later. Suddenly, she noticed Eric's abnormality, and couldn't help asking, what's wrong with you, why are you so excited? Eric spread his hands and laughed. That's right, I'm really excited. The devil fruit I've been dreaming of is here. The vampire form of the bat fruit of the zone phantom beast, this devil fruit is not in sleeping ancient town, God help me, really God help me, ha ha ha. What do you mean, this is a bat fruit? Slassie looked down at the devil fruit in his hand, with a puzzled look on his face. Cabbage widened his eyes and said in shock, Phantom beast, this is phantom beast devil fruit, my god. Slassie quickly asked, what is a phantom beast? Cabbage said contemptuously, you are Lousy's enemy, why did Lousy tell you? At this time, Eric stopped and stood, with his hands folded in front of him, and said in a deep voice, Hina, look forward to it. Hina froze for a moment, then asked suspiciously, what are you looking at? Eric didn't answer her, he took a step forward and shouted, fall down. His eyes froze. A faint ripple emanated from his body, sweeping away in all directions. All the pirates rolled their eyes before they could scream, and fell to the ground, fainting. What? Hina was taken aback, her beautiful eyes widened. Eric looked at her and said with a smile, this is Conqueror's hockey, half-baked mental abilities like them can't stand firm in front of me. Hina was very surprised and said, this is too strong. Eric laughed and said, only 1 person out of 1,000,000 owns it. It's normal to be strong. After finishing speaking, he stepped forward and walked forward. Hina looked at his back, her beautiful eyes sparkled, and said in admiration, as expected of Hina's man, he is indeed the most powerful. A knowing smile appeared on Jumei's face, and she hurriedly followed her. Soon, Eric picked up the devil fruit on the ground and looked it over carefully. Apple-shaped, deep purple with eerie swirls. Eric, did you just say it was a bat fruit? Hina leaned over and asked curiously. Eric nodded, and said with a smile on his face, That's right, this is a devil fruit that is rarer than Logia. After finishing speaking, it is necessary to pick it up and eat. Seeing this, Hina looked worried, and hurriedly said, Husband, is it really okay to eat 2 devil fruits? Hina is very scared. Eric stroked her hair, and said with a gentle smile, Don't worry my wife, your husband won't do things you're not sure about. After all, he raised his hand and started eating. Vomit. Immediately, Eric retched, with an ugly expression on his face. He cursed and said, Grass, it's so unpalatable, it's from Mahler Gobi. Hina didn't pay attention to his foul language at all. Seeing that Eric was fine, she hurried forward to hug him. It's okay, it's really okay, it's great. Just now Hina was almost scared to death. Eric patted her on the back, and said gently, My wife, this is not okay, you have to have confidence in your husband, you know. Hina nodded again and again, quickly let go of Eric, and asked curiously, Honey, how do you feel after eating this devil fruit? Eric spread his hands, looked up to the sky and closed his eyes, and murmured with a smile, It feels so wonderful, and my whole body is warm. Power, the power gushing out, this feeling is really beautiful, this is the power I dream of. Seeing his intoxicated look, Hina didn't want to disturb him, so she stood there quietly, very well behaved. Eric muttered to himself. Blackbeard made a big noise and impelled down, and the Red Earl took the opportunity to escape. His body was already very old at that time. So when he eats this devil fruit, he is restoring various functions of his body, but I am different. Eric opened his eyes, clenched his fist suddenly, crackling, his whole body was full of explosive power. I'm young and energetic now, and this devil fruit can't restore my body functions, so it will continue to transform my body, allowing me to start the second evolution. Very good, the effect is very good, and the transformation ability is stronger than dark fruit. Hina frowned, and asked strangely, Honey, why didn't I understand what you were talking about just now? Eric laughed loudly, and said in a happy mood, My wife, those are not important, you just need to know that your husband has become stronger, and he is very strong. Hina rolled his eyes at him, and said angrily, It's so mysterious, Hina doesn't even know what to say. Ha ha ha. Eric let out a smug laugh, then looked around, and said in a deep voice, These people have seen Conqueror's hockey, and they must not be allowed to live. This. Hina hesitated for a moment, then frowned and said, Would it be too cruel to kill them? Eric said seriously, There is nothing cruel, don't say these people are pirates, even if they are all Marines, I will silence them all. Conqueror's hockey must not be leaked. Hearing this, Hina was stunned for a moment, and said in disbelief, Husband, what did you just say, you want to kill even Marine? Eric nodded, with a serious face, Honey, I'm not kidding you, in order to become Admiral, I can do anything. Telling you this today is also to prepare you mentally in advance, so that you won't question some of my behavior in the future. But. Hina frowned, she was at a loss for words, she didn't know what to say. She felt that this was unreasonable, and it completely ran counter to the marine justice she insisted on. But Eric is her man, that's her god, everything to her. Contradictions. Hina at this moment is really quite contradictory in her heart. My wife, you have to understand that this world is cruel. When you want to climb up, you must step on countless people to get to the top. Eric explained. There is a saying that goes well, history is written by the victors. If I become the Black Dragon Admiral, all the previous black history will be wiped out, and no one will know what I have done in the past. Not to mention anything else, let me give you a ready-made example, why there is a blank 100 years. This is because those in power deliberately erased history, because they are successful, and history is written by them. I have said so much, I hope you can understand my good intentions. Hina was silent for a while, her eyes flickered, and she said after a while, Husband, although I don't agree with you doing this, you are my man, and I will follow you no matter how reluctant I am. Eric stroked her hair, and whispered softly, Don't worry, I'm not a murderer, as long as it doesn't block my footsteps, I won't care about any pirate marine, my goal is always the same. Hina nodded slightly, looked around, frowned and said, There are so many people here, how do we get rid of them? Eric smiled, looking indifferent, You don't need to do it, just watch mine. Dark Cave Road. As soon as the words fell, Eric's right hand turned into a hand of darkness and pressed to the ground. Boom! Countless darkness spewed out from his hands, and swept across in all directions. In an instant, all the soil disappeared, only a strange dark wave was seen. At this time, the space seemed to be distorted, and the sky also dimmed. The light was constantly swallowed by the darkness, which seemed very evil and terrifying. This is... Hina was taken aback, her face full of horror. Eric said calmly, "Dark fruit is the most destructive devil fruit in this world. Even Whitebeard's shock fruit can't match my destructive power. If I want, I can swallow an island instantly. This is the strongest black hole." At this time, all the pirates were sinking into the darkness and being swallowed up. Hina was dumbfounded and said in disbelief, "It's too scary, the power of the black hole is really too strong." Eric smiled, and said arrogantly, "With this strongest fruit, your husband and I are destined to stand on top of the world, ha ha ha." After speaking, he strode towards the beach. Hina's beautiful eyes sparkled, her face was full of admiration, and she hurriedly followed. Night. Warship, in a certain room. Asshole. Hina gave Eric a blank look, and began to blame. With a smile on his face, Eric couldn't help saying with emotion, "The Zone Phantom Beast Bat Fruit Vampire form is indeed the strongest devil fruit. That guy, the Red Earl, if he ate this devil fruit when he was young, Roger might not even be his match. Unfortunately, when he ran out of Impel Down, he was already too old. This fruit only restores his youth, and cannot transform his body at all. And I'm different, from this battle, you can see, ha ha ha." Hina snorted and said speechlessly, "What bat fruit? How can there be such a hateful devil fruit in this world? Hina hates this fruit very much. If you knew this was the case, Hina shouldn't have let you eat this devil fruit on the island." Hina regretted it. Eric quickly comforted and said, "My wife, I will become stronger after eating the bat fruit. Haven't you noticed that I have become more attractive? Not only that, but my strength has also increased countless times. Isn't this what you want to see the most? Don't say anything else, I'll just ask you a word, were you comfortable just now?" "Asshole." Hina rolled his eyes at him, and said angrily, "What's the use of being so strong? Hina doesn't like it, you is really too strong." Eric shook his head and said with a hey smile, "It seems that you are still too weak, that's not okay, it seems that you need to practice more to make this piano stronger, or you will not be able to bear it sooner or later." Quote, "Hina doesn't want to talk to you." Hina snorted. After a while, he asked curiously, "Honey, since it's a bat fruit, you should be able to fly in the sky." Eric lit a cigarette and smiled slightly. "It goes without saying that bats are animals that are very good at flying, and I ate this devil fruit, so flying is naturally easy." Speaking of this, Eric's eyes flashed, and he said, "This flying ability will be of great use in the future. I need to fly to a certain place, and there is a devil fruit waiting for me there." Hina only listened to the first half of the sentence, and couldn't help but admire and said, "Honey, with this bat fruit, you will be able to fight in the air in the future, and your strength will become stronger. As expected of Hina's man, Hina is proud of you." Eric smiled, his eyes flashed dangerously, and he yelled strangely, "Honey, since I'm so excellent, should I continue playing the piano? What do you want to do? Honey, you fool, do you want me to die? Hina hates you, Hina is dying." 3 days later, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Warship, on deck. At this time, Eric put his arms around his body, looked ahead and smiled and said, "After sailing for so many days, I finally saw Marineford. I saw a tall building in front of me, which looked very impressive." Hina rolled his eyes at him, and said angrily, "It's better when we get there, Hina is really scared these days, you fool." Eric smiled and shrugged his shoulders, "I can't help it, who made the bat fruit so powerful, and I don't want to do that either." It turned out that during the past few days, every night, the piano was playing in the room. After practicing the piano for so long, Hina was really tired, and her body couldn't take it anymore. "I don't care about you." Hina snorted, walked aside, and continued to practice two-color hockey. Eric was blowing the sea breeze, with a pleasant smile on his face, and he was in a great mood. Sure enough, time travel is the best, power status, including beauties, all of these can be obtained. And Hina is really beautiful. Playing the piano with her is really a very happy thing, ha ha ha. Eric looked up at the white cloud in the blue sky, feeling elated. Soon, the warship came to the coast. Looking at the building in front of her, Hina couldn't help exclaiming, "Is this naval headquarters?" Hina feels the breath of justice, which makes Hina stand in awe. Eric smiled and said, "Let's go, we have to report." Then, the two jumped off the warship and walked to the office building. On the way, many soldiers couldn't help talking when they saw Eric. "Look over there. Oh my God, 2 stars for 1 bar. How is it possible, such a young lieutenant colonel, who is he?" "I don't know, I haven't seen it in the headquarters." "Wow, that girl Marine is still pretty, pink hair, so beautiful. The guy is handsome, the girl is pretty, it's so amazing. It must have come from the branch. Otherwise, I would definitely remember such a beautiful woman." Not long after, Eric and Hina came to the office building. At this time, on the first floor, the Marines were coming and going, and it was very lively. The Marine ladies at the front desk are constantly processing documents and seem very busy. "Eric, you're here." At this time, Guillaume came out from the office next to him, still looking heroic. Eric snorted and said with a smile, "Guillaume, I didn't expect you to be here. Are you waiting for me here specially?" "Nonsense, what else am I doing here?" Guillaume explained. "I was upstairs just now, and I saw the two of you walking this way, so I know you must have come to the headquarters to report. You don't know anything about this place at all. Since I saw it, I have to help you guide the way anyway." Pausing for a moment, looking at Eric's epaulettes, he said in amazement, "You have become a lieutenant colonel, how is it possible?" Eric smiled slightly. "In the branch competition, I won the first place and broke the strongest point of North Blue, so I was promoted." At this moment, Hina frowned, and asked doubtfully, "Eric, who is she?" Eric quickly introduced. "Hina, her name is Guillaume. I met her in branch 166, and I have a bet with her." "Bet?" Hina froze for a moment. Eric nodded. "My goal with her is to become Admiral. If I become Admiral, she must become my woman. Otherwise, if she becomes Admiral, I will always follow her and become her subordinate." Ah, looking at Guillaume, Hina was surprised and said, "Your target is actually Admiral." Guillaume smiled. "Why, do you think I can't do it?" Hina lamented. Hina has never heard of a woman becoming an admiral. This is simply impossible. Guillaume didn't answer the conversation, looked at the two of them left and right, and guessed, "Seeing that you two are so close, it must be a couple relationship." Eric smiled and said, "Your eyes are bright, Hina is indeed my woman." Guillaume said casually, "Don't worry, no matter how many women you find, it has nothing to do with me. Our bet can proceed as usual. Okay, let me take you upstairs first." After finishing speaking, he stepped forward and walked forward. Hina asked in a low voice, "Eric, is she so strong that she wants to become Admiral?" Eric smiled and said, "Look at the sword on her waist. She is a very powerful swordsman, she is really strong, and her aptitude is very good." Hina frowned, and said in surprise, "So, doesn't she have a chance to become Admiral?" "What are you thinking? It's true that she is very strong, but there is no hope." Eric said confidently, "The next Admiral, Sakazuki, Kuzan, Pelusolino, and my Black Dragon Admiral, she is useless." Hina's beautiful eyes sparkled, and she admired, "Hina just likes to see your confident appearance, Hina really likes you." The two communicated in low voices, followed Guillaume and walked upstairs. Chapter 31. Third floor. Guillaume introduced. "Here we are, Suru Vice Admiral is on this floor." Eric snorted and said with a smile, "Guillaume, shall we report directly to Suru Vice Admiral?" Guillaume nodded. "The headquarters attaches great importance to you, so we arranged for Sister He to receive you. After all, your dark fruit is indeed too powerful." Suddenly, in the corridor in front, several people came out. It was Sakazuki, Pelusolino, and Kuzan. When everyone saw Eric, they couldn't help discussing it. Pelusolino tilted his mouth, and said strangely, "Oh, it turned out to be the Lieutenant Colonel's epaulettes. It seems to be from the newcomer North Blue." "Well, what's it called?" Kuzan murmured, and after thinking for a while, he said, "Oh, Eric, a dark fruit capable user." At this time, Sakazuki remained expressionless, and asked coldly, "Eric, can your dark fruit really restrain the ability user?" Guillaume quickly introduced. "Eric, this is Sakazuki Vice Admiral, that is Pelusolino Vice Admiral, and he is Kuzan Vice Admiral, they are the most promising candidates to become Admiral." Hina's beautiful eyes lit up, and she thought to herself, the three people Eric mentioned just now are not exactly them. It seems that these three should be the next Admiral. Eric took a step forward and said calmly, "Hello Vice Admirals, my name is Eric, a Logia Dark Fruit capable user, able to restrain all capable users." Sakazuki said coldly, "Eric, right. I'll try it myself sometime. I hope you didn't deceive me, otherwise you won't be able to bear the consequences." After finishing speaking, he walked to the office next to him. Pelusolino gave a strange laugh. "Oh, you were really unlucky to be targeted by Sakazuki." Kuzan muffled, "Don't talk about Sakazuki, I really want to try Dark Fruit's ability, I still can't believe it." Then, these people all walked to the office next to them. Seeing them leave, Gion breathed a sigh of relief, and quickly said, "Eric, you don't have to worry. Although Sakazuki is ruthless, he won't act recklessly." Eric smiled and said indifferently, "Don't worry, I don't take it seriously at all. I know he is a lava fruit capable user, with amazing destructive power, very powerful. But as long as he is a capable person, he has no advantage in front of my dark fruit, so how can I be afraid of him?" Hearing this, Gion was silent for a while before asking, "Eric, can your dark fruit really restrain lava fruit?" "That's magma, the strongest force of nature." Hina was dissatisfied, and quickly denied it. "The black hole is the strongest force of nature, which can swallow everything, and the mere magma will be swallowed anyway." Eric smiled slightly. Hina is right. The strongest force in the universe can only be a black hole, which can swallow lightning, light, magma, time, space, everything. In other words, thunder fruit, sparkling fruit, lava fruit, time fruit, and space fruit are all no match for dark fruit, they can only surrender. Gion still didn't believe it. After all, he had never seen the magic of dark fruit with his own eyes. But she didn't want to continue to refute, and said lightly, "Since you are sure, then it is a good thing. Let's go, the front office is here." After speaking, he took the lead in walking forward. Hina asked in a low voice, "Eric, although dark fruit restrains lava fruit, you are not yet Sakazuki's opponent, right?" Eric didn't even think about it, and said directly, "It's about the same. After all, I have a bat fruit. If I fly into the air, he will have nothing to do with me. Although he can moonwalk, in front of bat fruit, he is a child. I can kill him directly in the air." Hina nodded, with care in her eyes, admiringly said, "Sure enough, Eric is the strongest, and Hina admires you the most." Not for a while, the three of them finally came to the door of an office. Knock knock knock. Gion knocked on the door. "Come in." Crane Vice Admiral looked down at the file and said something calmly. Then, the three stepped into the door. Gion smiled and said, "Sister I brought Eric here, and the other one is Hina Lieutenant Junior grade." Hearing this, Crane Vice Admiral raised his head, first glanced at Hina, then ignored it, looked directly at Eric, and began to size up. Eric's eyes were calm, and he looked at Vice Admiral, and said in his heart, although Vice Admiral is not so old at this time, he is still old after all. At this moment, Crane Vice Admiral nodded, and said appreciatively, "You are a very nice young man. You can meet the eyes of the old man, which shows that you have a strong heart and very ordinary willpower." Gion smiled and said, "Sister Eric is the same as me, the goal is to become Admiral, it's normal to have such a mentality." What? No matter how calm Crane Vice Admiral was, he was shocked at this moment. Eric looked solemn, and said in a deep voice, "Yes, my goal is Admiral, and I have already thought of the code name, Black Dragon Admiral." Black Dragon Admiral. Crane Vice Admiral smiled and said in admiration, "This code name is really hockey. I hope that one day in the future, I can hear it with my own ears." After a pause, his eyes flashed, full of wisdom, and he said slowly, "Eric, since you have such lofty ideals, I will help you. You wait here for the time being, and I will report to the Marshal." After finishing speaking, he walked towards the door. After she left, Hina asked suspiciously, "What does Crane Vice Admiral want to report to the Marshal? Why can't I understand it?" Gion looked at Eric and exclaimed, "It seems that your chance has come." Hina quickly asked, "What opportunity?" Hina is completely confused. Eric's eyes flickered, and he smiled slightly, "If I guess right, I should be tested next." Gion praised, "You are very smart, Sister, he really thinks so. That's why I said your chance has come. I have a very good relationship with Sister He. She cherishes talents very much, and you have passed the test just now. She will naturally help you as much as possible, and will not miss any excellent soldier. After all, he sighed, and said helplessly, after all, there are more and more pirates, while marine talents are withering, so the senior management attaches great importance to it, and will focus on cultivating any potential newcomers. Hearing this, Hina was full of surprise. That's great, as long as Eric passes the assessment, wouldn't he be promoted again? Guillaume nodded, and said seriously, as long as you pass the assessment, promotion is inevitable. Marshal's office. At this time, Sora, Sengoku, Garp, and Zephyr were drinking tea and chatting. Sora rubbed his forehead, sighed and said, the sea is getting more and more chaotic, and the number of pirates is increasing every day. On the other hand, there are no talents emerging at Marine. What a headache. Sengoku took a sip of tea and said calmly, as far as I can see, Eric from the North Blue Branch is a pretty good talent. At this time, Crane Vice Admiral walked in and said with a smile, Eric, he has come to the headquarters and just finished reporting with me. Oh, Sengoku laughed, what a coincidence, I just mentioned him, and this guy came to the headquarters. Garp became interested and asked eagerly, Xiaohei, how is that Eric? He should be very good. Crane Vice Admiral smiled, I came here this time just for Eric's business. When he came to report just now, he said bluntly that the goal is to become Admiral, and the code name has already been thought of, Black Dragon Admiral. The old man thinks he is a very good talent, and I suggest giving him a chance to conduct an advanced assessment on him. Immediately, Garp became more interested, and laughed and said, to be evaluated by you, Xiaohei, it seems that this Eric is really different. Sengoku's eyes lit up, and he said, after you say that, I can't wait to meet this young man. Kong stood up, waved his hand, and said with a smile, if that's the case, let's give him an assessment. Crane Vice Admiral, take him to the training room, and this coach will personally assess him. Good. Crane Vice Admiral responded and walked towards the door. Garp was full of interest, and hurriedly urged, let's go, hurry to the training room, the old man wants to see how strong this young man is. Zephyr said with a serious face, I will arrange my student Smoker to fight against Eric later. Kong nodded, and said with a smile, Zephyr, you have a good idea. I would like to see how amazing that dark fruit is. Sakazuki office. At this moment, Pelusalino stepped in, and said in a strange way, Sakazuki, that kid just now is going to be tested, let's go and have a look. Test what? Sakazuki looked down at the file and said something coldly. Pelusalino put his hands in his pockets and yelled strangely, I don't know, but Marshal Kong has come forward, and he personally presides over this test. What did you say? Sakazuki looked up and said in disbelief, Marshal Sora tested it himself, what a joke. Pelusalino shrugged his shoulders and said casually, I can only say that young people nowadays are really scary. Sakazuki stood up and said in a deep voice, come on, I want to see if that dark fruit is really so strange. Crane Vice Admiral office. At this time, he stepped in and said with a smile, Eric, I have won you a chance. Marshal Kong will personally assess you. Hina's beautiful eyes widened, and she said in surprise, the Marshal conducts the assessment himself. Guillaume couldn't believe it either, and said in shock, how is this possible, how could Marshal Sora show up? Eric, on the other hand, looked calm and calm. Seeing this, he Vice Admiral secretly admired. This young man is really good-natured, calm and mature, and he is the material to be an admiral. Then, Crane Vice Admiral said with a faint smile, if it were other newcomers, Marshal Kong would naturally not show up in person, but Eric is different. Dark Fruit's ability to restrain ability users is indeed too weird. We all want to see it for ourselves. Okay, don't let the Marshal wait too long, let's go quickly. After finishing speaking, he turned and walked towards the door. The three of them didn't dare to hesitate, and hurriedly followed. On the way, Guillaume looked at Eric and said with a solemn expression, this time, you must take good care of it and give full play to your strength, and you must not be sloppy. After all, so many Marine executives are watching, if your performance is too poor, your future promotion will be completely cut off, remember. Eric smiled, and said lightly, if I get promoted too quickly, aren't you afraid of losing the bet? Gion held Kimpiro in his left hand and said confidently, "There is nothing to be afraid of, I am the future Momousagi Admiral." Hina blinked her beautiful eyes, and praised from the bottom of her heart, "You are the most heroic female marine I have ever seen, bar none." Eric smiled slightly, "Hina, why I bet with her is because of this reason." Inside the training room. At this time, many people have gathered here. Sakazuki, Pelusalino, Kuzan, Doberman, Ghost Spider, Flying Squirrel. Smoker looked at Zephyr with a cigar in his mouth, and said angrily, "What are you calling me for, teacher? Can you leave me alone if you are fine?" Zephyr frowned, and angrily said, "Smoker, you disobedient guy, you are the worst student I have ever taught." Smoker curled his lips, looking like he was going his own way. Garp patted Zephyr on the shoulder, laughed and said, "Don't worry, from today on, this kid Smoker will definitely practice honestly and become very obedient." Sengoku nodded, and echoed, "If Eric can really restrain the ability user, it can indeed kill Smoker's spirit." "What are you guys saying?" Smoker took a puff of his cigarette, very irritable. Zephyr said coldly, "Smoker, you are too arrogant. Relying on Logia smoke fruit, you don't pay attention to people of the same generation at all. Today, I will find someone to be your opponent. His name is Eric, and he is 2 years younger than you." Hearing this, Smoker said disdainfully, "A mere 17-year-old kid, teacher, are you planning to make that person look ugly? Let me tell you first, Logia smoke fruit is too strong, so I can't be sure what to do. Don't wait for me to beat me badly, and blame me when the time comes, I won't admit it." Zephyr frowned, and said dissatisfiedly, "You rebellious fellow." Just then, footsteps came. Crane Vice Admiral led the three of them and finally appeared in the empty training room. Garp looked at Eric, laughed and said, "Zuzu, I didn't expect you to be so handsome, it's no wonder you are surrounded by so many beauties, ha ha ha." At this time, Hina looked very nervous, with fine sweat on her forehead, and her heart was beating fast. She had never seen so many big people in such a big scene, so she naturally seemed timid. At this time, Marshal Kong looked at Eric and said with appreciation, "When you see us, you don't feel nervous or anxious at all, and your mentality is very good. You deserve to be someone who wants to be Admiral." Sengoku continued, "He is so calm and introverted at such a young age, he is indeed a talent to be made." Pelusalino put his hands in his pockets, and said strangely, "I heard that right, this guy wants to become Admiral. Are young people nowadays so scary?" Sakazuki snorted coldly, overreaching. "Sudden." Smoker said arrogantly, "Boy, are you going to be my opponent? You really are a brat." Eric ignored him, stood quietly, and silently looked at everyone present. Crane Vice Admiral looked at Kong, and asked, "Marshal, is the first test arranging for the two of them to fight?" Kong nodded and said with a smile, "Eric, Smoker, both of you are Logia-capable users, let's start arguing now." "Yes, Marshal," Eric responded and walked towards the center of the training room. Hina waved her little hand from behind, and said encouragingly, "Eric, come on, Hina believes that you are the strongest." Gion didn't speak. Looking at Eric's back, he thought to himself, "You must win. If you lose, everyone will remember your defeat. There is no hope for you to be promoted to Admiral in this life." At this time, Sakazuki said coldly, "I would like to see if dark fruit is really that powerful, the nemesis of capable people, what a joke." Pelusalino tilted his head, and continued to die. "I'm also curious, I wonder if I can restrain the sparkling fruit." Kuzan yawned and said lazily, "Eric, he's an interesting young man." Center of training room. At this time, Eric and Smoker stood opposite each other. Smoker took a puff of cigarette, with his nostrils upturned, and said arrogantly, "You little brat, you are also a Logia-capable person, what is devil fruit?" Eric put his arms around his body and said calmly, "I am a Logia dark fruit capable user, a dark man who can restrain all capable users." "Arrogance," Smoker said disdainfully. "Those with restraint ability, you brat really dare to say that? The teacher said to let you be my opponent, isn't that looking down on me? You little brat doesn't even have full hair." Eric was expressionless, and said lightly, "One bite at a time, I hope you can still be so arrogant later." Dark water. As soon as the voice fell, Darkness pushed forward with his left hand, the palm facing Smoker in front of him. Suddenly, the invisible dark traction, like a wave, quickly rushed towards Smoker. Boom. Suddenly, Smoker was shocked. How is this going? Smoker's face was full of horror. He found a terrifying attraction pulling himself. With a bang, the person flew forward like lightning. When he came back to his senses, he was shocked to find that he was caught by Eric. What is your ability? Smoker's eyes widened in surprise. Not only him, but all the Marines around were shocked. Sengoku couldn't believe it and said, "What's going on? Why did Smoker fly out suddenly?" Kong frowned, and said in surprise, "The nemesis of the capable person seems to be real." Pelusalino tilted his head, Hey, what happened just now? It's so scary." Sakazuki frowned and looked serious, but said nothing. Kuzan sighed, "Dark fruit, it's amazing." At this time, with disdain on his face, Smoker said loudly, "Although I don't know what's going on, but you want to catch me, don't be kidding me, I'm a Logia user." After speaking, "It is time to elementalize." Sudden. What? Smoker was taken aback, and said with fear on his face, "Why can't I elementalize? What the hell is going on?" Eric smiled and said confidently, "Smoker, I told you, I am the nemesis of all capable people, you think I am joking with you? Your Logia smoke fruit is nothing to me." After finishing speaking, he threw Smoker out directly. Seeing this, Garp narrowed his eyes slightly, and said in surprise, "I can't see it, this kid Eric is so powerful." Zephyr nodded, and echoed, "Not only is he strong as a devil fruit, but he also hasn't lost his physical training. It can be said that he has developed in many aspects." Sengoku exclaimed again and again, "It's amazing, it can make the Logia ability user unable to elementalize, it really is the nemesis of the ability user." Kong said in a deep voice, "Obviously, dark fruit can pull the ability user. After catching it, it can make the ability user lose the power of devil fruit. The answer is definitely this." Crane Vice Admiral sighed, "It's really a weird devil fruit." At this time, oh, what a frightening young man. Pelusalino's mouth was crooked, his eyes were flickering, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Sakazuki looked gloomy, and said coldly, How could there be such a weird devil fruit in this world?" Kuzan shrugged his shoulders and sighed, "So, if he catches me, I won't be able to use the ability to freeze." Center of training room. "Impossible, I don't believe it." Smoker yelled and said angrily, "I am a Logia-capable person, how could I be suppressed by you? Impossible." He really couldn't accept this cruel fact. Eric spread his hands and said solemnly, "What's impossible? I want to be Admiral, you can't be my opponent." Smoker shook his head, cheered up and said, "I was careless, I must have been careless just now, come again, this time I will not be careless again." Eric said lightly, "Smoker, you are the brat, I don't have the time to play around with you here. If you still don't admit defeat, then I won't be so easy to talk about next." With a cigar in his mouth, Smoker said energetically, "Again, I can't lose to you, the one who wins must be me." Eric sneered, and said with disdain, "If you don't cry without seeing the coffin, then I will fulfill you." Dark water. After finishing speaking, the dark left hand pointed at Smoker again. "I don't believe that I will be pulled over by you, elemental." Bang. Smoker's body exploded directly, turning into countless smoke. Suddenly, the entire top of the training room was shrouded in white smoke. "Small tricks, come here for me." Eric stared. The terrifying dark traction erupted, directly sucking all the smoke over. When Smoker touched the dark left hand, all the smoke dissipated, revealing his figure again. "How can it be?" Smoker's eyes bulged and nearly popped, shocking ultimate. Eric said coldly, "I told you, in front of my dark fruit, your smoke fruit is nothing but rubbish." As soon as the words fell, the right hand suddenly clenched into a fist, turning into pitch black. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Armament hockey. Sengoku and the others all exclaimed with shock on their faces. At this time, Eric's fist finally landed on Smoker. Bang. Ah. Smoker let out a painful cry, he flew backwards and hit the ground heavily. He didn't vomit blood, which showed that Eric was still in control. Finally, Sora recovered from the shock, and quickly asked, "Eric, how did you master armament hockey?" Eric turned to look at him, smiled and said, "Master Marshal, I researched this myself." "What?" Suddenly, everyone exclaimed, with surprise written all over their faces. Kong said in disbelief, "Eric, you said that armament hockey was developed by yourself." Eric nodded and said with a smile, in order to become Admiral, I have been studying hard. The two-color hockey is indeed researched by myself. Not only that, but I also researched another ability to use the black hole property of dark fruit to eat multiple devil fruits. Shock. Everyone was shocked again. How can it be? Sengoku exclaimed in complete disbelief. Marshal Kong was also shocked and said, Eric, what are you talking about? How many devil fruits can you eat? Eric smiled and said, Master Marshal, when I entered the Grand Line, I encountered two pirate groups fighting for a devil fruit, and I finally got it and ate it. As soon as the voice fell, there was a pop. Suddenly, a pair of wings appeared behind Eric, and his ears became very pointed, and his forehead was dark, which looked very weird. Shocked. In an instant, everyone present was dumbfounded. Pelusalino tilted his mouth and said in amazement, Oh, I really ate two devil fruits, it's scary. Dark fruit, Sakazuki said coldly, frowning. Kuzan was amazed, and said in a low voice, No wonder I want to become Admiral, so this guy has such good qualifications. Gion was also very surprised, and said in disbelief, Eric can eat many devil fruits. Of course, Hina said proudly. He is Eric, a natural talent in cultivation, and he is naturally very good at developing dark fruit. At this time, Marshal Kong asked in surprise, Eric, you look a lot like a bat. Could it be the zone bat fruit? Eric smiled and said, Master Marshal, this is the vampire form of the bat fruit of the zone phantom beast, which can restore a young devil fruit. What? Marshal Kong widened his eyes and said in shock, Eric, what are you talking about, devil fruit? Sengoku was very surprised and said, It's the same phantom beast fruit as me, how is this possible? Garp laughed loudly, and said in admiration, Eric, you little guy, you're really lucky. It's just a matter of traveling, but I have to admire your luck for you to meet such a magical devil fruit. Zephyr exclaimed, Phantom beast, that is even rarer than Logia, there are not many in the whole sea. Crane Vice Admiral looked at Eric, eyes filled with admiration and said, With an incomparably powerful devil fruit, and such a great talent for cultivation, if you are given enough time, you may become Admiral in the future. Sudden, Marshal Kong pointed to a dynamometer beside him, and said seriously, Eric, that's an intermediate dynamometer, try it and see how many points you can get. Yes, Marshal, Eric responded and walked to the side. Garp narrowed his eyes slightly and said with a smile, This kid has good physical fitness, and with armament hockey, he should be able to score 70 points. Zephyr nodded, and said in agreement, I am also very optimistic about him, and he will definitely break through 70 points. Pelusalino put his hands in his pockets and said with great interest, Sakazuki, how many points do you think he can score? HMPH, although he knows armament hockey, he definitely won't exceed 80 points, and it's only around 70 points if he dies. Sakazuki said with disdain. Kuzan yawned and lazily said, Scores over 70 are pretty good, he's only 17 years old. Training room, east. Finally, Eric stepped here. Looking at the dynamometer in front of him, he couldn't help but think back to the branch competition test. That time, he scored 66 points, breaking North Blue's strongest record. Start shocking naval headquarters today. Eric's eyes froze, and armament hockey was instantly covered with his right hand. Then, bend your arms and pull back, accumulating all your strength. Breakthrough. Eric roared and punched out hard. Boom. The stone slab was shattered directly, and the sound of an explosion spread throughout the training room. Immediately afterwards, the force measuring machine beeped and a black screen appeared. Shocked, everyone present was stunned. Everyone's eyes widened, as if they had seen a ghost. As Eric's woman, Hina was the first to react, and exclaimed, Eric is indeed the strongest, even the dynamometer exploded. Hearing her voice, Gion came back to his senses and said in shock, How is it possible, how could his strength be stronger than mine? At this time, everyone gradually came back to their senses. Hey, the machine is blown up, what the hell is this? Pelusalino's eyes widened, showing surprise for the first time. Sakazuki couldn't believe it and said, Impossible, the dynamometer must be broken, it must be. Kuzan couldn't believe it. So strong, is this guy really 17 years old, it's too exaggerated. Garp laughed loudly, and said appreciatively, Well, Eric is doing well. This is the first time I've seen such a terrifying young man like you. You are born with supernatural powers. You can compete with this old man, ha ha ha. At this time, Marshal Kong frowned and asked, Eric, you said that you can eat as many devil fruits as you want. Does that mean that 2 is not the limit? Eric nodded, and said seriously, Master Marshal, although I don't know exactly how many pieces I can eat, but it is definitely possible to eat another one. There is no sense of saturation at present, and I can continue to devour devil fruit. Quote. Hearing this, Marshal Kong exclaimed, Unbelievable, I didn't expect dark fruit to be so magical and weird. Sengoku said enviously, with so many devil fruits, the strength has doubled, and the potential is unlimited. Dark fruit, what kind of devil fruit is it? I can't believe it. Crane Vice Admiral's eyes sparkled with wisdom, his face puzzled, and he couldn't believe it. At this time, Marshal Kong waved his hand and said with a smile, There is an advanced dynamometer nearby, but there is no need to continue the test. This test will end here. Eric, come on, follow me to the office. After speaking, head to the door first. Eric beckoned to Hina, and hurried to follow. Soon, everyone dispersed. Zephyr looked at Smoker, reprimanded him, Didn't you say that you are very powerful? Eric is 2 years younger than you, and his strength is stronger than you, do you still have the face to be so arrogant? Smoker was very upset and was about to refute immediately, but finally endured it. Although he was arrogant and domineering, he had to admit that he was indeed not Eric's opponent. Garp patted Zephyr on the shoulder and said with a smile, Don't worry, after this battle, Smoker will definitely realize his problems, and he dare not be arrogant anymore. Sudden, Smoker clenched his fists with a serious face, and said loudly, I will definitely surpass Eric, I will not lose to him. After finishing speaking, he walked to the side and began to practice crazily. Seeing this, Zephyr nodded in relief, and said with a smile, It's good to be stimulated, it's time for him to be stimulated. Let's go and see that little guy Eric. Full of interest, Garp hurried to the door. The other side, Pelusolino put his hands in his pockets, and said casually, Marshal Kong personally summoned him. It seems that Eric is about to be promoted. He is such a terrifying young man. Sakazuki looked cold, and said disdainfully, Admiral's candidate is not yet his turn, I will definitely prevent him from taking the position. After all, stride away. Kuzan yawned, and said with sleepy eyes, The viewing is over, and I should go back to sleep. Marshal's office. At this time, they are drinking tea and chatting here. Garp, Crane Vice Admiral, Zephyr, Sengoku, and others, are all here. As for Sakazuki and others, they each returned to their offices. Garp looked at Eric, smiled and said, Little guy, you have to work hard, that kid Smoker swears to surpass you. Eric sat upright and said confidently, As long as he is capable, he is destined to lose to dark fruit. Crane Vice Admiral's eyes flickered, and he said with wisdom, Your dark fruit is very useful. Many of the vicious big pirates are all from the background of ability users. If you are strong enough, you will definitely have a huge deterrent effect, and the atmosphere of pirates will gradually disappear, and it will no longer be so rampant. Sengoku echoed and said, Don't talk about others, Whitebeard Newgate, Kaido from Beast's Pirates, Charlotte Linlin, they are all capable people, and they stand atop the new world. If Eric becomes stronger, with the restraining effect of dark fruit, these sea scum will definitely be restrained. Hearing this, Eric's face was serious, and he said in a deep voice, Please rest assured, I will improve my strength as quickly as possible, and I will never slack off. Marshal Kong was very satisfied and appreciated it. Eric, you not only ate 2 devil fruits, but also taught yourself to master the power of hockey. You are the one with the best qualifications among the people I have ever met, bar none. In view of your special situation, I would like to seek your opinion and give you as much room for development as possible. Marshal Kong said with a smile, Now let's talk about your future development plan. I believe you must have already formulated a series of promotion goals. Garp laughed and reminded, Eric, if you have any ideas and requests, you can boldly raise them. If you miss this opportunity, it will be difficult to speak in the future, ha ha ha. Eric's eyes flickered, he thought for a while, and said solemnly, Master Marshal, if possible, I would like to choose a branch to become the leader and take charge of the party. Suddenly, everyone froze for a moment. Immediately afterwards, everyone looked at Eric with appreciation. Garp ate the senbei, laughed and said, Eric, I can't see it, I didn't expect you to have such an idea, it's very good. Sengoku nodded and praised. It seems that although you are young, you still know the doorway very well. If you don't have the experience of being in charge, no matter how strong you are and how qualified you are, it is impossible to be promoted to Admiral. After all, a soldier without management experience is not qualified for Admiral's position. At this time, Marshal Kong took a sip of tea and said with a smile, Eric, you really have thought about everything long ago. Tell me, where do you want to work? I will try my best to meet your requirements. Eric didn't even think about it, and said bluntly, East Blue. East Blue. Marshal Kong froze for a moment, and said in disbelief, Eric, are you sure to choose East Blue, which is the weakest sea in the world? Eric nodded and said with a smile, Master Marshal, it is precisely because East Blue is the weakest sea area that I should go there. As long as you give me some time, I will definitely make East Blue change drastically, and I will no longer be the weakest existence in the world. At this time, Garp laughed loudly, and said in admiration, Eric, East Blue is my hometown. If you choose this place, I will give you 100 promises, ha ha ha. Marshal Kong looked serious, thought for a while and said, Eric, if you want to go to East Blue, it's really suitable right now. Marine's 16th branch, the former Colonel Mordo, died of illness some time ago, and the branch just needs a person in charge at present. Well, you set off as soon as possible, and go to the 16th branch to take office. Eric stood up, gave a military salute, and said loudly, Yes, Marshal. Kong waved his hands and said with a smile, Okay, you go out first. Yes, Eric responded and walked towards the door. He murmured in his heart, the 16th branch, remember when the plot started, the colonel at that time was the villain Mouse. After Eric left, these older Marine executives were talking about Eric while drinking tea. Sengoku smiled and said happily, First thought Marine talent was withered, but I didn't expect such a weird talent as Eric. Zephyr nodded, and said gratifiedly, It is indeed a geek. He can eat many devil fruits. This breaks the curse of devil fruit. He is the first person in the world. Crane Vice Admiral sighed. Eric is indeed a martial arts prodigy. If other people get dark fruit, it is impossible to develop to this point. In such a remote place in North Blue, I can learn hockey by myself. I still can't believe it. It can only be said that the world is so big that there are indeed talents from the sky, and non-common people can compare with it. Garp laughed, and said in agreement, Xiaohei, you were right, Eric's cultivation talent is probably the best in the world. Marshal Kong took a sip of tea, feeling refreshed. I'm looking forward to the day he becomes Admiral. In the hallway, at this moment, Hina and Guillaume are waiting here. Guillaume shook his head and said with emotion, Eric performed so perfectly in this assessment, promotion is certain. Hina took it for granted. That is, he is Hina's man, he is amazing. At this time, Eric came over and said with a smile, What are you talking about? Eric, have you been promoted? Hina's beautiful eyes sparkled, and she asked quickly. Eric nodded and said with a smile, I've been promoted to colonel, not the headquarters, but the colonel of the branch. Guillaume froze for a moment, and asked suspiciously, Branch? Eric, are you going to work in the branch? Hina was anxious and said in disbelief, Eric, if you go to the branch, what will happen to Hina? Eric smiled slightly, Hina, you just stay here at the headquarters and practice hard. I have to go to the branch and take charge of the administration. Only in this way can I accumulate enough management experience and be promoted to Admiral in the future. Hina frowned, and said in confusion, but. Eric patted her on the shoulder and persuaded, Hina, I know you are a considerate woman, I believe you will understand me. Don't worry, in a few years, I will definitely return to the headquarters again. At that time, I must be a general. Although Hina was very reluctant, she still nodded firmly, and said seriously, Eric, you go, Hina will work hard to become stronger, and will not hold you back. At this moment, Guillaume frowned, and asked suspiciously, Eric, you just said that if you want to be promoted to Admiral, you have to be in charge first. Who did you hear that from? Eric smiled, and said lightly, I haven't heard from anyone, this is my personal understanding and opinion. But, just now Sengoku Admiral said something to let me know that my opinion is correct. What? Guillaume hurriedly asked with an anxious face. After all, this is related to her goal, so she naturally attaches great importance to it. Eric didn't make a fool of himself, and said directly, a soldier without management experience is not qualified for Admiral's position. Sengoku Admiral said so. What? Gion exclaimed, her beautiful eyes widened. Impossible, if you want to become an admiral, you definitely don't need to be in charge. Gion shook his head and said in disbelief, if there is such a request, sister, he will definitely tell me. It is impossible for a wise person like her not to know this. Eric thought for a while and analyzed. Perhaps in her view, it is impossible for a woman to become an admiral, so she doesn't want you to continue to torment. Of course, it may also be that she thinks that the route taken by the female admiral is different from that of the male admiral, so she didn't tell you. What is the specific reason? You can ask her later. Eric smiled and said, now, take me to get the military uniform first, I have to change into the colonel's clothes. P.S. Brothers, there are a lot of beauties in East Blue, and my younger brother may not be able to get them all. Can any elder brother tell me in the comment area to prevent missing girls? After all, beauties can't be cheap for others. We must win them all, and we must not let a single one go. Please any big brother to help, to prevent omissions. Okay, come with me. Gion Hideo frowned, her heart was in a mess, and she walked upstairs. Hina leaned over to Eric and asked in a low voice, you didn't lie to her, did you? If you want to become admiral, do you really need to be in charge? Eric nodded, and said calmly, Admiral is not only a military rank, it not only represents the highest combat power of Marine, but also the face of Marine in this sea. It is absolutely impossible to be promoted to Admiral if it is just strength. In short, if you want to become an Admiral, you must develop in all aspects. Strength, combat achievements, management experience, etc. must meet the standards, so that it is possible to sit in that position. Hina was surprised and said, if this is the case, it would be too difficult. Eric smiled, the reason why I said that I can eat multiple devil fruits is to get the attention of the high level. My dark fruit is a stepping stone, enough to knock on the door of Admiral. Hina nodded thoughtfully, looked at Gion's back, and said softly, so, isn't she hopeless? Eric was very sure, she has no hope. After the big event, I would rather choose Admiral for the world's conscription than consider her as Admiral's candidate. It can be seen from this that it is impossible for a woman to become Admiral. Of course, it was impossible for Eric to say these words. Fourth floor, warehouse. Soon, Eric changed into his military uniform and stepped out. Hina hurried forward, carefully looked at the epaulettes, and said with emotion, a bar of 3 stars, as expected, this dress is the best looking. Eric shook his cloak and said with a smile on his face, I think so too. The colonel's clothes are full of energy. At this time, Gion said in a depressed mood, Eric, your affairs have been settled, I'll go first. After finishing speaking, he hurriedly walked downstairs. Hina guessed, she should be asking Suru Vice Admiral. Eric nodded and said with a smile, Hina, I won't stay here anymore, and I'm leaving for East Blue immediately. If you miss me, you can call me at any time, and I will wait for your call. Hina gave him a blank look, and said angrily, you bad guy, you have to call Hina too, or Hina will ignore you in the future. Eric stroked her hair and whispered softly, for the sake of a happy life in the future, I can only wrong you for the time being. After speaking, Eric walked downstairs without any hesitation. The farewell between a man and a woman does not need to be so chaotic, just to show the true qualities of a man. Hina watched Eric's back silently, with a face full of reluctance, and watched him leave. Crane Vice Admiral office. Gion didn't knock on the door, but walked in directly. Crane Vice Admiral saw her abnormality, and asked strangely, Gion, what's wrong with you, your face is very strange. Gion sat down and asked eagerly, Sister just now Eric said that in order to become an admiral, one must be in charge of the government. Is this true? Silence. Seeing her like this, Gion suddenly understood everything. So, doesn't that mean I have no hope of being promoted to admiral? Gion's eyes were dull, his beautiful face showed a look of disappointment, and his heart was hit by 100 million points of crit. Seeing this, Suru Vice Admiral sighed, and said helplessly, Gion, I didn't want to tell you before, and I didn't want you to make too much trouble. After all, Even if you work in a certain branch, no matter how rich your management experience is, it's useless. Guion said blankly, why, can't I become admiral no matter what I do? Crane Vice Admiral shook his head, smiled wryly and said, I know you have great potential, and your future strength will definitely reach admiral's level. However, the selection of admiral is not up to Marine to decide. It is an opinion from the highest level, and we have nothing to do with it. And those 5 adults are all people who have lived for countless years. People like them are relatively conservative, and they pay attention to winning in a stable way, and they will not be so radical. So no matter how well you do it, they won't consider it. After all, no woman has ever become an admiral. They won't open such a precedent. Immediately, Guion was weak all over, leaning against the chair, without any energy in his eyes. It could be said that he had lost his fighting spirit. Crane Vice Admiral came over, patted her on the shoulder, and said comfortingly, Guion, don't be discouraged, there is still a glimmer of hope. What hope? Guion quickly sat up straight with an anxious look on his face. Crane Vice Admiral thought for a while, with the light of wisdom in his eyes, and said slowly, times are always changing. If those 5 adults want to reform Marine, maybe there will be a glimmer of life. In short, don't be discouraged, continue to move towards this goal, and wait for the opportunity. Hearing this, Guion's beautiful eyes gradually lit up, and he said energetically, Sister He, as long as there is a glimmer of hope, I must fight for it. In this way, you can help me see which branch is more suitable, and I will take office as quickly as possible. Crane Vice Admiral smiled slightly, nodded and said, don't worry, I will help you find one, and I will arrange it for you in the next 2 days. On the warship, Eric put his arms around his body, his eyes calm, and he looked at Marineford who was fading away. Next time I come back, my military rank will definitely not be lower than Rear Admiral. The breeze blew, the cloak fluttered, and the 2 words, justice, on the back were so dazzling. At this moment, Eric was in high spirits, with the posture of pointing out the country and scolding Fang Chu. 8:30 in the evening. Marineford, inside a single dormitory. Hina took out the phone bug and called her father. Blue blue blue. The crisp ringtone spread throughout the dormitory. Taking advantage of the gap between the phone calls, Hina was about to pick up the cigarettes on the table, but finally endured it. Eric doesn't like Hina smoking. Hina should smoke less and quit smoking as soon as possible. At this time, there was a sound of cloth clipping, and the phone was connected. Girl, call me at this time, have you arrived at the headquarters? Croft laughed heartily, feeling very good. Ever since Hina and Eric got engaged, the smile on his face has never stopped, and his smile is as bright as a flower every day. Father, Hina has finished reporting and is in the dormitory. Hearing this, Crove was shocked, and quickly asked, how is it, have the senior management summoned Eric? Speaking of this, Hina was very excited, her beautiful eyes sparkled and she said, Father, Eric's performance today is really great, even the marshal was shocked. What? Crove was taken aback, couldn't believe it and asked, Hina, what did you say? Even Marshal Kong was shocked. Hina nodded and said with a smile like a flower, Father, the process was really exciting. Not only the marshal, but also the 3 admirals and the vice admirals were all shocked. Croft was very surprised, and urged, Hina, what happened? Tell me quickly, I'm so anxious. Okay, Father, Hina will describe it for you. Hina thought for a while, began to organize her words, and said with a smile, we arrived at Naval Headquarters at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, Hina spoke eloquently, vividly describing the entire assessment process. When it came to excitement, Hina couldn't help pointing fingers and spitting, she didn't look like a lady at all. Crove, on the other hand, has been listening quietly, asking only occasionally, being a competent listener. I don't know how long it has been. Hina drank some water and said with a smile, Father, the whole process is like this. Hina can't describe it in words. You have to see it with your own eyes to feel the shock. No, I'm very shocked right now, Croft said with emotion. Although the description is not as good as what I saw with my own eyes, I still feel thrilling. It's unbelievable. My son-in-law is so powerful. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is a dragon among men. Now he has also become the leader of the branch, equal to me, and he is only 17 years old, ashamed for his father. Hina was very happy to hear him praise Eric so much, and said with a smile, "Father, Eric is a monster, we can't compare with him." Croft laughed and said happily, "That's true, I don't need to compare with him. He is my son-in-law. The better he behaves, the happier I am naturally. No, we can't be the only ones who know about this matter. I'll publicize it in the branch tomorrow. I'm bound to let all the branches of North Blue know about Eric's great achievements." A new day. North Blue 166 branch, on the training ground. At this time, the soldiers were doing morning exercises, and Deja was watching from the side. At this time, Andre strode over, smiling all over his face. Seeing this, Dea asked in surprise, "Colonel Andre, why did you come so early today, and you seem to be in a good mood, is there any happy event?" Andre nodded, and said loudly, "Everyone, don't practice, I have a happy event for you." Suddenly, the soldiers all stopped and listened quietly. Andre was very excited, and announced loudly, "I just got the news that Eric has performed outstandingly in the headquarters and has been promoted to colonel." Dea exclaimed and said in shock, "Master Eric, he was promoted to colonel." In an instant, the soldiers directly blasted the pot. "Oh my God, Eric has become a colonel. This. How long has it been? From a soldier to a colonel, what the hell? I'm sorry, don't you want to be so exaggerated, it scares me to death. When Eric was a soldier, I was already a seaman first class. Now that he has become a colonel, I am still a seaman first class. Sure enough, I am a waste. Colonel Eric, it's too strong, it's really too powerful. Colonel Eric, I would like to call you the strongest." At the same time, all the branches of North Blue got the news, and they were all shocked to the extreme. Similarly, the towns below also knew about this, and discussed Eric one after another. Among them, the place where the discussion is the most intense is Eric's hometown. The small town of Konig. Eric has become a colonel. Suddenly, a resident shouted loudly, kicking off the prelude to discussing Eric. "What did you say? Eric became a colonel? I also just heard that Eric has gained the attention of Naval Headquarters and has been promoted to be a colonel. How can it be? Wow, Eric has become a colonel. My God, this is incredible. It's really smoke from the ancestral grave. A colonel can walk out of our small town, I'm afraid I'm not dreaming. Colonel Eric, you are the pride of Konig Town. Yes, Eric is the pride of all of us, it's so amazing. Ah, Colonel Eric." In the following time, the small town of Konig discussed Eric every day. Whenever Eric is mentioned to the nearby towns, their faces are full of pride. And said a word quite proudly, "Colonel Eric, he was born in the small town of Konig and grew up here since he was a child." The residents of other towns were envious one by one, feeling their own town, why there is no such an excellent talent as Eric, all beating their chests. East Blue, Branch 16. In an office. At this moment, Captain Mouse was leaning on the chair with his feet on the desk, with an angry look on his face. The headquarters actually sent someone here. Now Lousy's chance is gone. Lousy is the most suitable person to be a colonel. Immediately, the subordinates joined in one after another. "Yes, my lord, you are the soul of the 16 branches. The headquarters is too much. The captain works hard, but he didn't become the top leader. I heard that the new colonel is only 17 years old. He doesn't even have full hair. To become a colonel at such a young age, he must be a related family, with a deep background. What's the use of talking about the background? This is East Blue, and it's not the turn of this brat to be presumptuous. A strong dragon doesn't overwhelm a snake. When we come to our place, he has to coil up even if he is a dragon, and he has to lie obediently even if he is a tiger. That's right, we just don't want to kill him." The mouse nodded, and said sinisterly, "In a few days, that brat will come, and then Lousy must show him off, let him know how powerful Lousy is, he. 5 days later, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Warship, on deck. At this time, Eric continuously released darkness, covering his whole body. The light around him was constantly swallowed by the darkness, the space seemed to be distorted, and time seemed to stand still. The armor of darkness, it doesn't sound hockey enough, let's change it to demon armor, this one sounds better. Eric looked down at his body, and saw that the darkness had materialized, forming a hard armor, which looked hideous and terrifying, as if a demon god had descended. Bullets definitely can't break through my defenses, and even Momosagi's attack can't break through either. But if it's a Kainu, my defense will definitely be broken, and I have to continue to strengthen it. Immediately afterwards, Eric walked to the side, where there was a large bucket. This is Eric ordering the soldiers to salvage the seawater and put it inside. Soon, Eric came to the bucket and put his hand in it. Immediately, the demon god's armor pushed the seawater away, and it would not be affected by the seawater. Sure enough, dark fruit can restrain the curse of the sea. Eric's eyes lit up, and Jonan couldn't help showing a smile on his face. Then, he jumped, and the whole person fell into the bucket. In an instant, the demon god's armor was activated, pushing away all the seawater, making it impossible to get close to Eric's body. Eric continued the test, squatting down, submerging this person in the seawater. Nothing has changed. The seawater was completely blocked by the demon god's armor, so it couldn't penetrate in at all. Very good. The second step of the experiment was successful again, ha ha ha. Eric walked around the bottom of the bucket, waved his hand, and continued the test. It turns out that the movements are not affected at all and he can play to his full strength. Sigh. Eric jumped out of the water and landed on the deck smoothly. Then, he stepped to the side of the ship and looked down at the blue sea. I saw the sea water beating the warship, making a crashing sound, and the waves were rolling. I will definitely succeed. Eric jumped up without hesitation. With a bang, the whole person entered the sea. Just like before, the seawater was pushed away, unable to pass through the demon god's armor at all. It's done. It's really successful. Sure enough, dark fruit is the strongest, ha ha ha. At this time, a fish came over and looked at Eric very curiously. It was the first time it saw a strange fish covered in darkness. Die. Eric's eyes froze, and the conqueror's haki radiated out. Immediately, the fish rolled its eyes, fainted, and fell to the bottom of the sea. Eric was very satisfied, with a smile on his face. As he thought, conquerors can still be used in the sea, and his strength has not been affected in the slightest. With bat fruit, you can fight in the air. Now that I have overcome the curse of the sea, I can fight in the sea. Land, sea and air, I am not afraid of anything now, and I don't have any weaknesses. If you encounter Whitebeard on the sea, just break the boat and pull him into the sea, and you can kill him in minutes. Eric was overjoyed, laughed loudly, caught up with the warship, and jumped onto the deck. Half an hour later, Eric is hitting a sandbag. At this time, a soldier came over. Colonel Eric, the 16th Marine Division is ahead. The tone was very respectful, and the eyes he looked at Eric were full of admiration. Eric liked this look very much, and said with a faint smile, "It's finally here." Then, he lit a cigarette and looked ahead. Not far away, an island appeared, and a lot of people had already gathered on the coast, all wearing soldiers' uniforms. Obviously, this was arranged by Captain Mouse long ago. The coast. Captain Mouse squinted his eyes, and said with a cold face, "People will be here soon, everyone should behave well later, have you heard that?" "Yes, Captain. Don't worry, my lord, I must have made him lose face. I want to come here to be a colonel, what a joke. I promise, within 3 days, he will return to the headquarters in despair." 3 days, what a joke, I guess he will have to pack up and leave tomorrow. Kill him. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.